Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you to this workshop here during the SME Assembly on the role of the SMEs in place-based industrial policies. My name is Thomas Wobben. I'm the director in charge of SMEs and industrial policy at the European Committee of the Regions. And I'm very happy to welcome you all here. Veronique Williams has asked me what is place-based, so I hope after this workshop everybody knows it. And I'm also very happy to welcome in the audience Alexander Lemke from the OECD, which has made a nice brochure also with looking at regional maps, so which is of course very important in this context. I'm also very pleased to be here with you because this is another example of the close cooperation of the European Committee of the Regions with the Commission in this field. And of course we have a very timely debate just after the COP26 in Glasgow and with the Green Deal, which requires a substantial change and transition, not only in digital but climate, but also in the economic model we are working in. And this transition is not possible without the SMEs in the center. And of course you wouldn't be surprised that for a Committee of the Regions, of course the place-based aspects are of crucial importance, and we will discuss this during this session. And we will start at the beginning with a political statement of our rapporteur on the SME strategy, Eddy van Heijem, the regional minister in the province of Overijssel in the Netherlands. I hope Eddy is with us online, and I would ask the technician to put him on the screen. Eddy, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Thomas, and good afternoon to all of you, especially also to you, Thomas. Good to see you, although it is from a distance. I'm very sorry that I can't be with you in Slovenia today, but COVID is still causing us a lot of trouble in the Netherlands. Not just us personally, but also the companies we discussed today, the SMEs. They have really had a hard time, and still we are not over it. But I'm very glad that I'm able to participate from a distance in your discussion today. As you said, I was indeed the rapporteur for the SME strategy for the Committee of the Regions. I was very honored to do so. But I was also involved in the development of the industrial strategy, a report which was drafted by my Dutch colleague, Jeannette Beaulieu. And I stress this relationship because I think both strategies are really connected. There can be no industry without SMEs, and there can be also no effective industry policy when regional ecosystems with their innovative SMEs are ignored. And this is also the place-based dimension I would like to bring in the discussion today, as you asked me to do. But first, let me give you an example. Yesterday, our President Ursula von der Leyen visited ASML, a big company in Eindhoven. ASML is a leading Dutch high-tech company that manufactures machines for chip production, a major player in the global value chain of semiconductors. In a comment on Twitter, President von der Leyen stated that the European Commission wants to double the EU market share in chip production by 2030 and also make the EU more competitive and sovereign in the tech sector. Well, these are really ambitious goals and they demand a strong industry policy. But I believe that we will only achieve these goals if our regional ecosystems of innovative SMEs continuously help to improve the performance of ASML in this respect. And let me give you an example. In my province, the region of Twente hosts a high-tech university and many SMEs that supply machine parts and systems to ASML, like Demcom, 3T, Norma, Mazevon. A lot of companies that work together on improving the performance of ASML. Our university, University of Twente, helps ASML to improve the performance of their machines for chip production by using ultraviolet light. And also our regional photonics R&D agenda helps to develop a new generation of chips faster and more energy efficient than traditional chips. And on this R&D foundation, startups and scale-ups develop new applications and help to improve processes. Well, this is just one example of the strong connection between our big industry and regional innovation clusters with strong and specialized SMEs. But Europe hosts many important big companies, big industries, in the manufacturing industry, in chemistry, in energy, health, and food. And I believe it's really important that the European industry strategy focuses on the challenges they face, like how to stay competitive by developing and applying new enabling technologies like artificial intelligence, quantum computing, digitalization. They have to become more sustainable and circular, consuming less energy, less raw materials. They have to become more self-reliant, less vulnerable, also for geopolitical reasons. Now, I think in all of our European regions, we find parts of the big puzzle. And I strongly believe that a regional smart specialization should be a cornerstone of Europe's industry policy. Our SMEs are part of global industrial production chains, but also participate in networks that tie them to a region. And this is, as you asked with the introduction, Thomas, I really believe this is the place-based dimension of the industry. These regional networks consist of regional labor markets and skills programs, research at universities, R&D centers, open innovation networks, such as digital innovation hubs, which are organized most of the times in a regional scale, but also regional business development and investment funding. Our industry is really rooted in and nurtured by these regions. And as a representative of a region, I strongly believe we have two important things to do. First things we have to do is strengthen the cooperation between the stakeholders in our regional networks and make policies that are place-based by bringing knowledge, skills, new technology and capital together in smart clusters. And make sure that we do not forget SMEs and family firms, because we are tempted to focus mainly on startups and scale-ups. And in the region I just mentioned, the region of Twente, we have chosen a smart specialization, for instance, in the field of smart manufacturing. Now, the second thing we need to do as regions is learn from each other and cooperate across borders. We have to develop common projects in research, in value chains, and also for SMEs and industrial networks, strong projects of cooperation. And European programs like Horizon, Interreg, and Digital Europe, they already provide us real good opportunities, and they challenge the cooperation. But I especially welcome the new interregional innovation investment instrument, the so-called I3 instrument, that will help us bring innovations to the market. This instrument invites us to invest in key enabling technologies, to apply these technologies to new products and production processes, and also to cooperate in new production chains. Now, it is up to regions to participate actively, identify common interests, and look for partners. And networks like the Vanguard Initiative help regions to connect and work together in dedicated projects like artificial intelligence and smart health. And I really believe that this is the path to the future, these interregional cooperations. So let us prove that a place-based regional industry policy is the core of a strong, smart and sustainable Europe. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Eddie. Thank you for this very inspiring speech, also giving some answers on the place-based approach, which we also see as an important element to strengthen in the industrial policy strategy of the EU, because we see that this is really where the different levels come together. I would now turn to our three short speakers, short statements of the speakers we have invited, and I'm very happy to welcome them. First of all, it's Christina Fanjul, the Director of the European Centre for Business and Innovation of Asturias. It is Klaus Zauer, who is the Division Head and Chief Executive Officer of EcoPlus Digital of the region of Lower Austria. Hello, Klaus.
Good afternoon. Hi, good afternoon.
Hello. And Ulrike Firnis, the EU Affairs Director for the region of Gothenburg, the Swedish region. And I would start with Christina Fanjul first. Christina, I recall that Open Innovation 4.0 has been awarded with an EEPA award in the category Improving the Business Environment in 2019. And your region has also been awarded the EER label. Can you tell us how you built on these achievements to support SMEs in your region? Christina, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Thomas. Thank you very much, Eddie, for your very nice introduction, who makes me easy to start with, let's say, the speech and the presentations. So my speech is about this role-plays industry, how to really think global, but really act local, which in fact every strategy, every framework, every policy making, it needs to be landed at the territory to create the impact and to make a reality from all of this. So I'm going to show you the example of Asturias, my region, which are fighting to find a place for a dynamic and a very competitive industrial SME ecosystem. First of all, let me tell you one word about my organization, because as Thomas said, I work for an incubator, for a technology-based incubator. But the thing here is important that when considering the SME industrial policy, the entrepreneurship and the technology-based company is not considered something alone, something isolated, but we are thinking in a global and integrated way of economic promotion policies and economic promotion instruments. So when thinking about industrial, yes, it's time also to think in a startup, in technology-based companies, and the way all of them are interacting. So don't be afraid. I will be enthusiastic with talking about the startups, because I think they can create something new, something added value for the industry. So another word, when we talk about place-based industry, it's important to know the starting point of every region. And every region has a different story behind. And it's important to know, because you need to act based on the roots, based on your background, and need to create policies and decision-making and instruments who are able to cope your challenges and your story. So let me tell you some words about the story of Asturias. So when thinking about Spain, this is not the Mediterranean part of Spain, this is the green part of Spain. We are in the north, we are Celtic, not really Phoenicians. So in the end, Asturias is a very small region, it's only 1 million inhabitants, but it is proud of their industrial tradition. Our industrial tradition is based on the very heavy industries, it's iron and steel. It was also shipbuilding. So you can think what was the revolution some decades ago, when the diversification and all the reconstruction should need to make. But we are still proud of our industrial tradition. On every policy needs to be clear about it. We need to keep and to maintain the industrial wave of let's say the global value added in the region. 99% of our industrial tissue and our business tissue is are SMEs. This is, the amazing thing. But the amazing thing is 96% are micro SMEs, which in fact makes the difference between the very big policies, because as you can see, the target here is very wide. So we can think on corporates, we can think on very heavy industries, but we need to think that in our territory, the SMEs, the industrial tissue SMEs around these very tractor and corporate companies are the ones who are, let's say, the more wide opportunities to really be increased. And the policy should take into account, first of all, the corporates, like in this role of tractor, it's important to take into account, but the SME tissue around those corporates, and the new emergent tissue, which is the technology-based companies. So the objective of our, let's say, industrial policy, of course, is still keeping the industrial wave in our economy, because we all know about this pandemic, how important it is to keep our manufacturing capacities and maybe trying to reorient, try to react in order to, let's say, be able to have this technology and manufacturing sovereignty. I think we need to think a lot about this in the future policies. But we need to also think that the global challenges are very global. And Eddie mentioned the global value chains. So what we need is to incorporate and try to integrate all this industrial tissue in these new global chains. Let me give you a very tangible example. One of my heavy industries in Asturias is steel, iron and steel. So people around, so SMEs around tend to build, let's say, pipes, tubes for this oil industry. Everyone in the region is now thinking in new global value chains. It's thinking on use all these capacities, all these manufacturing capacities about the metallurgy, on all these capacities, this culture, this traditional culture, in order to make new products, for example, for the renewable energies or the offshore new global value chains. This is the real value of the new industrial policy. Try to identify, trying to accompany and trying to push those SME industrial policies in order to incorporate to this very industrial needs. So this initiative you mentioned about, the interregional investment for, new global value chains will be absolutely welcome in regions as us, which are moderate innovator. What does it mean, moderate innovator? It doesn't mean that the linear model of R&D, let's say, always thinking on putting money in R&D is not the right model for us. It's not the right model because it still creates inequalities. If you only think in R&D indicators and if you only think in R&D investment, which of course is important, and I think we have time to talk about it, you are lacking a lot of things because it's creating inequalities. And still, the gap between those, let's say, central areas with more, let's say, natural ways to be incorporated into these global chains are still ahead. And we can catch up from the peripheral region as it is mine. So we need to increase the competitiveness of the SMEs, but we also need to pay attention to these global challenges, of course, on green and sustainable. Please take into account that my region is specialized in manufacturing and the first transformation manufacturing of very raw materials, which means steel, which means zinc, which means aluminium. So you can imagine still the kind of very big challenges we have about this green and sustainable. And we receive with a lot of illusion, a lot of attention, the way of new investment in, for example, the new green steel investment that ArcelorMittal, which is the main corporate in our region, is going to make in the next years. We need to be also think on digital, and I think one of my examples are around this idea of incorporate the digital. But we need to be also inclusive, and it is important because there's no policy which is disconnecting from the social impact, and we have seen you for the last year. So even when we talk about, this transition, this ecological and digital transition, we need to put the adjective fair transition. This is the good way. The European Union needs to stand about the values, and one of the values of the European Union is the cohesion, is that we need to move forward together, as is this the title of the session, together with the resilience and of course paying attention to all these globals. So as a moderate, let's say, innovating region, we need to pay attention to the system, which is the more important, because the linear model of innovation, as we mentioned before, is not enough for us. To put money into R&D is not enough. My SMEs, my industrial SMEs, learn by doing, learn by, use, learn by feedback from others. So the important way in order to approach an industrial policy which is putting and try to move forward there is the collaboration. So it's not without surprise that our two best practices that we are going to present today are based in this word, collaboration. Of course, there are the frameworks, and you mentioned the smart specialization is of course important. The new generation fund are coming, but what is important is to really consider that those frameworks need to be regional place, need to be focused in the real situation of every organization. My ecosystem in the region is not probably very different from yours. We have the generation of knowledge, we have the universities, we have the technology centers. We have also, of course, let's say the cluster, which is important because the cluster, when we talk about SMEs, is about collaboration. It's when one SME don't have there enough resources to really keep on and to really keep, let's say, and to really bring the innovation inside. So those kind of associations are important for them. And of course, the collaboration between the ecosystem, as I mentioned before, is one of the keys of every area. And especially when we talk about the digital innovation hubs, okay, this is a word very well known for every of you. It's difficult to shape also. There's some ways we are trying now to really shape and to really seize let's say the initiative. But what is important here in digital, and I would like also to mention, is the role, let's say, of the commercial opportunities and the role of companies and the role of technology-based companies and startups. About digitalization, and especially talking about digitalization of SMEs, is not about R&D. You don't need to be, let's say, at the frontier of the knowledge. Maybe the possibility to increase the digitalization, to increase the innovation, and to increase the competitiveness came from, let's say, commercial products that need to be, the speed to adapt to new needs. So digital innovation have different lines. Of course, there are the competences, the R&D, but let's also think on, commercial, let's say, way of doing things. And of course, the new generation of new business model around it, which is also let's say, the reason why our incubator is also participating in this. And of course, the specialization you mentioned before. Our digital innovation hub will be based in advanced manufacturing, which is important because, as I mentioned before, our, let's say, industrial wave is based on manufacturing, so we need to move a step forward this new additive and this new advanced manufacturing, and of course the data. Everybody is thinking about data. Everybody is thinking about how to make the smart decision based on this data, how to take advantage of this, let's say, new oil for the future. And let's just finish the intervention around one specific instrument, one specific tool we are carrying out in the region, which is the one Open Innovation. We are proud winners of the EIPA 2 years ago. So it was an initiative which is important because, as I mentioned before, we need to think on those corporates who are based in the region because, of course, they have this power of traction. They have the possibility to increase also the level of all the SME around who work around them, subcontractor or members of the supply chain. But we always have to think in this new emerging industrial tissue, these new startups. And we are proud to say that at the moment we have, let's say, a community of around 200, let's say, technology-based companies, startups, prepared to act and prepared to, let's say, be an innovation ambassadors. Because once you put this in a regional territory, a startup is behaving like an ambassador, like an innovation ambassador. So the Open Innovation Initiative is around building common spaces to speak, building common spaces to act about different challenges, and find a way that the positive advantage of being a corporate in means of market and the positive advantages of a technology-based company, which is flexible, to have those kind of competences, technological competences, but enough flexibility to be adapted and to be adapted to the needs to the corporates are going to cooperate. Well, the initiative is progressive. The initiative is connected also with the possibility of funding. So we identified the challenges, we published a call with the challenges, we came with the solutions, we made these matchmaking solutions with the corporates, and we have financing, we have funding for create this proof of concept around every of the challenge. So after, let's say, 4 editions, I can tell you about some, let's say, quantitative results, which are not so bad. A lot of people is involved, a lot of solution, a lot of energy is coming from this initiative. But what is more important is the qualitative results. We are creating a culture of collaboration between the bigs and the smalls, which is not so easy, I can tell you. And it's important to know that at the moment we have more than 25 proofs of concept for different solutions who are really wanting and who are looking for a way to scale up and to really arrive to exploit their potential. This is all about our best practices, and I will be happy to initiate the discussion around it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christina. I think you made a very passionate presentation of the system in Asturias. I would like now to give the floor to Klaus Teppelzauses online on the way Lower Austria is addressing this. You have been working on the House of Digitalization, and I would be we would be very interested if you give us your vision of how to support SMEs. You have been also a winner of the European Entrepreneurship Region label in 2018, so the floor is yours. And Klaus, please, if you can, do it in 8 minutes or 7 minutes so that we have some time for discussion afterwards.
Yes, sure. Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation to talk. Okay, I can't click on this presentation. Okay, I'll start in this way. Thanks for the invitation. I feel very honored.
Klaus, you can. You can.
Now I can. No, I can't. Oh, yes. Okay, it's working. Thank you very much. Yeah, and within the next minutes, I will give you a short overview about Lower Austria, the biggest province in Austria, about our economic strategy 2025, and about the actors we are dealing with all the time. And I want to highlight 4 instruments we are working with to build up a great and, I would say, a reliable innovation system with respect to our smart specialization strategy. Second, to address the needs of the SMEs and the needs of the big industry in Lower Austria, and third, to cover the whole value chain of Lower Austria's economy and beyond that. Okay, Lower Austria, I've mentioned it, it's the largest province in Austria. Our big advantage is that Vienna, the capital, is in the heart of Lower Austria. We have about 1.7 million inhabitants. We have R&D centers all over our country, and we have a very heterogeneous economy landscape. I want to mention that the differentiation of the companies in Lower Austria, we have more than 99% of small and medium-sized enterprises in Lower Austria, and this means a lot of this. So, a few words to digitalization in Lower Austria. Afterwards, I wanted to highlight our program, House of Digitalization. You see, we're in the middle of the European field. I don't want to talk about this. I think we have to do a lot of things to increase here our digital competences. So, here we have the Lower Austria Economy Strategy 2025. On the right hand, you see all the different actors, like EcoPlus, the business agency of Lower Austria. We have the Chamber of Commerce, we have the Federation of Industry, we have different incubators, we have financial instruments, and central services will be chiefly provided by the means of location management, technology and innovation programs like Technopole program, cluster program, as well as a corporate development and financial products. The whole or the entire portfolio of support services must be expanded to meet the customers or to exactly the need of the economy and new competitive demands while retaining flexibility and project focus. It was mentioned cooperation, new forms of cooperation within the Department of Economy and with the different external partners should lead to new ideas, innovations and solutions. So let me highlight, this is EcoPlus. I think I don't need any minutes for this. So let let us come to the clusters, to the technopoles in Lower Austria. In 2012 and 2013, we were finalists from the Regio Stars Award. The aim is to make technologically oriented site development. This means we have 4 technopoles in Lower Austria, and each of these technopoles has a clear focus. We're working there with R&D institutes, with universities, and different companies. Most of the companies are small and medium-sized enterprises, but on the other hand, we have some big companies which are very important to foster all the different R&D projects. Open innovation is here no topic. The next thing is clusters in Lower Austria. This is all our 4 clusters has the cluster management excellence. We have at the moment about 580 members of our clusters, and 95% of these members are small and medium-sized enterprises. And our mantra is innovation through cooperation. This means small and medium-sized enterprises have to cooperate with R&D institutes, and our cluster manager are going to, on the first hand, to identify the topics, and the second is to moderate the process, because if sometimes there's a different speech or different language between an SME and a university or R&D institute, and we're going to moderate this to bring exactly very good results at the end of the day. The next thing, it was mentioned, the House of Digitalization. Yeah, it's a program we started in 2018, and there are 3 different steps. The first step was that we have developed a network with all the competences in Lower Austria, and this network is, let me say, the engine of our project. The second step was, okay, we want to inform, we want to support the small and medium-sized enterprises in Lower Austria in the way of the digital transformation. This means they need a lot of information, they need a lot of best practices, and there we launched in 2019 the Virtual House of Digitalization. And the next thing, the actual building, at the moment the construction is running, and the real House of Digitalization is located in Tulln, and it would be the heart of our project. There will be a co-working space, there will be a very big showroom where you can get different ideas what digitalization means at the end of the day. And our program House of Digitalization, on the one hand, we're the coordinator of a regional digital innovation hub, and we're the coordinator for the application at the moment for the European Digital Innovation Hub. One of our very new instruments are the platforms. Here I want to highlight our platform for green transformation and bioeconomy. In the presentation in front of me, there was the topic green and sustainability. This platform works with different institutions. On the one hand, the whole industry, small and medium-sized enterprises, big industry. We're working with different institutions, R&D institutes, and so on, because bioeconomy and transformation, I think it's impossible. It's important for everybody within the next years. So let me summarize short. To involve SME and industries and to cover the whole value chain, we have in Lower Austria different instruments. The first instrument is thematically orientated, like the technical program. The second is alliance according to sectors, like clusters in Lower Austria. The third is it's important for the entire society, like our House of Digitalization. And the fourth way is topics that are very important across all industries, like green and sustainable, like our platforms. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Klaus. I think that was short and clear. And before we have the chance to have questions raised to the speakers, I would invite Ulrike Firnis to join us. Ulrike is representing Göteborg, another winner of the European Economic Region, Entrepreneurial Regions label. And your region has recently brought together 13 municipalities and all stakeholders in a big conference during the EU Industry Days to look at the Entrepreneurial Action Plan of 2022 and 23. Could you explore a bit what you do and how you interpret this place-based approach in your industrial policy?
Yes, with pleasure. Can you hear me in the back? Yeah, good. We heard some very nice words this morning from the president of Eurochambers. He was talking about rescue, recovery, and rebuild. And I would like to add a fourth R, and that is replication. I want to share with you a project that we do, which is ever so simple, but very, very highly efficient, as a means to help SMEs to get out of the effects of the crisis and to get back on trail again. But before indulging in this project, which you all can replicate very easily, I would like to say a few words on our region. Business Region Gothenburg, winner of the EER Award, and the project I will be presenting is called Competence Plus. I will adhere to the Swedish pronunciation and the Swedish spelling, and when you go home you have learned one more word in Swedish. Congratulations. This is not a Caribbean cocktail. It looks like one. And don't worry in the back if you can't read it. That's not what I am trying to convey. This is our EER strategy. That's the strategy that gave us the EER award. And it is cohesive, it is coherent, it is interconnected, it is bottom-up, and it is future-proof. An industrial-based entrepreneurial policy is a quite complex thing, but it can be done in the long end. As one example of today's topic, we have a lot of clusters in the Gothenburg region. You might know we're in West Sweden. We're a home of Volvo. We have very, very heavy automotive industry, and Sweden is one of the innovation leaders. And the only cluster actually that we do not have, for very natural reasons, is mining. This, of course, is very closely connected to the S3 smart specialization strategies. But even this we will not indulge upon now, but it is one example of place-based industrial strategies that you all have in your regions. We in the Gothenburg regions, we hold 33% of the entire country's private R&Ds. With private, we mean private by enterprises, not by the public sector, which is very much because we're just a little bit of the vast country, which is 2,000 kilometers long. So, Competence Plus, what is it I'm trying to show to you very briefly so you can replicate it and do it yourself at home. Of course, you all know we had a crisis. SMEs went almost into bankruptcy, or they did go into bankruptcy. Very, very good, highly qualified people were made redundant. So what do? We have to match them together. We want to counteract the effects of the pandemic by matching SMEs with new available skills, which in essence are people that have been made redundant, and we want to have a rotation of skills between the industries, because that is when innovation happens. So we want to create a working model, because unfortunately we think this was not the last crisis on earth. There may be coming one or more too, who knows? What we are doing, and this now is the high replicability, you can do it all in your regions. We match highly skilled people, nota bene, not the people that come to our country with poor literate command, but highly educated people, and we match them with SMEs. And this first square, the matchmaking, that really is the key. There is no manual for it, but you have to have some fingertop feeling and some guts feeling, which company could fit with what people, and maybe not so much the competence, but do the people fit. My highly accomplished colleague Pernilla Blom has this kind of fingertip feeling, and she does it very well. When we have done that, we have a startup conversation with the SME, with the unemployed expert, and with the public sector who is in charge of the project. They get going. We follow up between 1 and 3 months later. How is it going? Is it doing well? And then after 6 months, another follow-up. 3 examples. A chief helping restaurant to handle food waste and to the correct pricing. A retail expert that helps actually the police authority with the procurement process of all the equipment they need in the car. Or a lean engineer helping a micro SME to grow their carrots. The benefits for innovative businesses, it's a unique possibility to get new skills, an efficient and cheap recruitment process. Moreover, they got somebody into the company who has the possibility to look far ahead. How do we cope with the transformation process? Because SMEs, as we all know, are so busy with earning the daily bread, they many times do not know how shall I transform my company and cope with digitalization and green environment and all these things. And cross-cutting, as I was saying, things happen when different parts of industry talk to each other. Benefit for the redundant person, of course, is feel needed. Imagine yourself, you're highly expert, you're highly skilled, you've been made redundant. This is a personal tragedy, and of course there is a social cost as well, having people lying on the sofa being depressed, looking at Netflix all day long. So this is a very good chance to let them go out. They get a chance in a new industry, they meet new people, they might even discover a field of interest that is something they can start their own consultancy companies. And, which is the most usual question, it is non-profit, they do not earn money, it is voluntarily, but we cover insurance. Expected results, in bold style is the goals, and in brackets I put the results. By now, the project isn't finished. I'll just pick out a few because I think the time is going now. We have reached out to 600 businesses. That was our goal. We did it. 32 businesses have support. I'll pick out a few now. We have already 6 new establishments in the region. 40 businesses have some unemployed skilled person. We expect 2 new networks to emerge. 3 is what has come out by now, and 100% high replicability because the next crisis will come. We were talking a lot about the ecosystems and interaction of the ecosystems. I won't go into all the details now, but it's the entire public sector in our region who are in some way or another dealing with unemployed people on that educated level. Welcome to Replicate, and don't hesitate to ask me if you want to hear more. Thank you.
Thank you, Ulrika Finnes. And I think we have now had several explanations of how a place-based approach could look. Veronique had to leave us because she's sharing her own workshop later on, but I think when we look at place-based, it is always multi-stakeholder, it is always a system, it is focused on local needs, and it links to the places, not only to 1 or 2 big cities, but it sees the whole territory. It's innovation through cooperation, it's multidimensional, and it is interconnected, as we just saw. So these elements are needed to really make it work. And now I would turn to you. If you have any question to the speakers, please raise your hand. I have to repeat your question so that the online colleagues can also know what the question is, because we don't have an outside mic. And please tell us who you are when you raise the question. I've seen here the first question.
Yeah. My name is Wieland Patrick from the Dutch Confederation of SMEs. I have 2 questions, one for Christina and one for Klaus. The question for Christina is, you mentioned with the telling body language that it is not easy at all to make small and big companies cooperate. I would like you to tell us more about the practical situations you encountered. And my second question is for Klaus. It's a bit a question of ironical question. Or ironical situation. You explained, Klaus, that you started with a digital program, first the network, then the digital house, and then the real thing is not the digital house but the physical house. Is that not a contradiction for a digital program? Thank you.
Okay, there were two questions. One is how to make small and big companies to cooperate, and the second one is, isn't a digital house in concrete a contradiction to the digital world? So maybe Christina, you start, and then Klaus, you can join in, and others prepare the question, please.
Thank you very much for your question. In fact, it's a very critical and important thing. Let me give you my insights and my experience about this. First of all, corporates, we talk a lot about bureaucracy from the public sector and so on, but the red tape of the multinationals, not so far. Because they tend to work in isolated way. Like say, the purchase people who are on the corporates has nothing to do with the innovation department, has nothing to do with some other departments, which means that when you talk about cooperation with an SME or an entrepreneur who is not the natural profile, let's say something very well established, the sensation and the feeling of risk is enormous. And of course, we all know that the big corporates are really afraid of risk. So first of all, to collaboration, it's really important that the open window for cooperation normally is not the purchasing department, but it's maybe innovation, maybe open innovation. A lot of corporates have incorporated, let's say, some profiles to develop some of the policies. It's normal, but on the other hand, the culture is different, let's say, the flexibility is different, and I'm speaking here also for my entrepreneurs, for my technology-based companies. They need to understand how a very big corporation, a corporate works, and the way of having this mutual dialogue, understanding the times, understanding the decision-making within a company, which is something sometimes very complex, understanding where the value added of the product is put. Maybe it's not in the technology because corporates are not, let's say, pay attention of the technology, but the added value they give us for the innovation and for the product. So this is a mutual dialogue which is very constructed, but sometimes is difficult. So this way of having open innovation program structure, let's say, promoted by public authorities or other entities who make a structured path, who made the commitment from the part of the, let's say, the leaders of the company who are putting pressure into other departments in order to move forward with the project, it's important. But on the other hand, the positive and the flexibility of the process make that in the end, after this process, which sometimes is very complex, the mutual benefit they obtained is also very high. Corporates learn to work with a different speed, with a different flexibility, and they understand how innovation is ruling today, which is not really ruling us, let's say, some decades ago or even some years ago. The level of speed of the technology makes that you cannot wait a lot in order to create this kind of very structured path for incorporating to purchasing with the technical specificalities. It's like, the innovation procurement, but applied for corporations. So let's see, this is a very short insight. I will be, very happy to discuss after with you some concrete examples, but in the way is the difference between cultures, the difference between speeds are very high.
Thank you, Christina. And Klaus, would you like to join in?
Yes, thank you very much. Believe me, it's not the first time that I get this question. The answer isn't so easy. It's yes and no. Yes, it's definitely a contradiction to digitalization, but no. If you look at the recent months, you see there's enormous demand from face-to-face meeting to direct interactions between people. And digitalization is often a very anonymous space. You can use video systems, calls, and so on and so on, but I think everybody wants to have a personal connection, and with our real house of digitalization, we want to make a vivid ecosystem where you can spend a very good time, where you can work, where you can get a coffee, where you can talk with experts. and where you can inform yourself about the different means of digitalization.
Okay, thank you, Klaus. Is there any other question? Yes, please.
My name is Reinhard Mohr. I'm representing VGSD, what's a German association of very small companies, very small, and for freelancers. And it's Claudia? Christina. Okay. You said you have very small companies in Asturias too, and you make them successful. How do you make this enormous money that's coming down from the European Union trickle down to the very small companies? Because for us in Germany there's a barrier. All the bigger companies get the money that's supposed to trickle down, and we as very small companies or freelancers, we are left behind. We do not get the money because it's too complicated.
So the question is, how does small companies, really small companies, can benefit from funding? Because it seems that all the money goes to bigger companies. Christina, what's your experience there?
Well, we are in this fight now, right now. We are in this fight because the level of speed we need to execution for the funds sometimes makes that, the big dimension of the projects, it's of course in very big, let's say, for the really micro SMEs. But on the other hand, we still have the opportunity to design instruments especially adapted to the needs of these micro SMEs, and we are in this. So let's think that we have different level of intervention, and we have different level for the instruments, and there's of course this idea that for very big projects, probably, let's say the money in first wave is going for the corporates or the very big industries, but let's also think that there will be incentives that the money also goes for, the supply chain and, the subcontractor and everything which is around the corporate. This is one hand. But on the other hand, we are designing very specific instruments, especially going for the micro SMEs in different aspects. We can think on entrepreneurship, and we have thinking on a new way, a new system for new entrepreneurs to go. We are also making bigger the current instruments we have. For example, for technology-based company, we are thinking on having more opportunities to fund more companies which are in the pipeline, let's say. So I think there's a combination, a realistic combination of both of them. But it's true that I'm struggling trying to make that this enormous capacity, because I wanted to think only money, is the capacity and the competences that this instrument is going to provide in the territory. It needs to go for the micro. Let's say 99% of my industrial tissue, of my business tissue, is micro SMEs. We cannot think in a future without them.
Thank you. I think Ulrike wants to join in as well.
May I pose a question back to you? What kind of money are you talking about? Is that loans, or should it be subsidies or real support in cash?
No, it's not only cash, but we hear of billions of money that's poured down from the European Union. And we as micro SMEs, we do not receive this money because it's too complicated, too many forms, and nobody of us has a legal department, so we can't apply for this money. And if we apply for this money, there usually is a bank. The bank as a gatekeeper who will stop the money coming to us because we're just too small. But if you have, I don't know, 100 or 500 employees, you get the money. You have somebody working for you to make the European funding come down. But micro SMEs do not have the chance even to reach to this money stream. It's not only money, but most important it's money. Just to survive a couple of months, or to start a new project, or to get some innovation done. We do not get the funding from the European Union because it stops somewhere above us.
And you don't get anything like innovation checks, so you can apply for a check like €5,000 in order to hire somebody who can develop your project or your innovation? They don't have that?
I think you're really cut off.
Oh, come to Sweden.
So I have a timing issue, but I see another question coming, and maybe very short. Sorry?
Because I don't have a very
Well, you please raise your question and I repeat it on the mic.
Okay, so I try to push up. No, I was very interested by the question because it's very often the money is there somewhere, but it's difficult to get even the information to know how to get it. Not all big enterprises are member of a huge or important federation that could do the link at local level or even at regional level. So I do think that it's something that is important to know that for micro enterprise, sometimes for social enterprise, that are very specific, the information is happening. So the money is there. There is a huge effort at regional level, at national level, from the European Union as well. But the information and the communication.
So, okay, maybe we can raise that in a bilateral question. I just wanted to say that most of the EU funding is going through the regional structures, ministries at the regional level, and very often, even though EU funding is in it, it's not branded as such. Yeah. So this is, I think, also very important. But I'm more than happy to invite the colleagues to join and have further discussion on it. I have to look a bit at the timing because we have invited André Meyer from the DG Grow, who is in charge of SME policy in DG Grow, to give his reflections on what he has heard and how he sees, in his views, this link between the place-based approach, the industrial policy, and of course also the SME policy. So, André, it's all yours.
I'll try to sneak in from behind.
Okay.
Yeah, is it okay? Can I? Thank you. Well, first, hello to the online space and to Eddie. I was not here whilst you were speaking, but I was graced with a copy of your notes so I could prepare, because I have been in the room next door and tried to follow the discussion from there whilst multitasking with some other issues. I'd like to be brief because you mentioned the time problem so many times that I'm trying to help you. There is a lot of whinging in Europe ongoing about we need a Silicon Valley. Lots of politicians say that, and why don't we have a Silicon Valley? Well, we don't have it for two reasons. Number one, it is extremely difficult to reproduce because you need a bunch of plum farmers who don't want to farm anymore, and you need a lot of public money that has to be poured into, and mostly from defense funds and NASA funds. If you look at the history of Silicon Valley, that's actually what brought the whole thing about. And there is a second reason why we can't reproduce it, because we have it already. We have over 20 Silicon Valleys in Europe, and we're adding every year, with the help of our friends from the Committee of the Regions, 3 to that, unless COVID makes us to add 6 in 2 years. But that's a recent development. Because the European entrepreneurial regions are our Silicon Valleys. And that's what we're very grateful for, because they are really the showcases that we need. And we are together again with the Committee of the Regions trying to help these regions, or trying to instigate, they don't need our help necessarily, but trying to instigate that they cooperate better among themselves also, because that was something that struck us a few years ago. There are these excellent regions, but among themselves there are some initiatives, but it's not so developed, or not as developed as I think we all wanted it. And so again, there we're trying to help and trying to bring the cooperation to another level. And that is something that is very dear to us, and that's why I'm very happy that you come here and show us the different regions, and not only Lower Austria, because I'm Austrian, I'm not from Lower Austria, but also other regions that cooperate here. I'd like to just react to a few points that have been made here. One is digitalization. There is this contradiction in a way to move from a digitalized service to a physical house. But please, let's not fool ourselves. The internet is not green at all. The internet itself is an extremely energy war thing, and the more fiber we add, the more energy we need to cool it or heat it, depending on the season. So it's not just by moving things into the virtual world that we are going to reduce our footprint and that we're becoming more sustainable. That links me back to what Eddie referred to, the development of chips and other electronic devices. Also, that is very important, because the better we develop them, the less energy war they are. So there a lot of research investment needs to go in. And that brings me to the last thing, and that's the billions that are poured into Europe and never reach the small companies. Most of these billions are actually research money. And indeed, they don't reach micro-enterprises, because there are extremely few micro-enterprises who do research. Yeah? That's number one. These are most of the billions. The other package of billions go into agriculture. And that again is something that is not really sort of in the micro-enterprise level that you were referring to. And the last thing about all the billions is what Thomas referred to. And that's that a lot of the support is not even known that it is based on European money. And I'll say it with an anecdote. Under the COSME program, which has formally ended, but there is still some money sort of dispensed from the program, we have had huge fights with the financial institutions that in the end disperse the money, that they would actually tell their beneficiaries what enabled them to make the loan a bit cheaper or to ask for less collateral. We went down to something that we all thought is pretty ridiculous, but it was necessary. We forced them to force the beneficiaries to sign a box that they recognize that this loan that they got, or this grant, or this beneficial treatment when it comes to collateral, was possible because there was European money behind it, like a bank guarantee or whatever. Why are they not doing it? Not because they're anti-European or anything, but the local bank that gives you the cheaper loan wants you to believe that it's because they are such great bankers and you are such a kind person. Huh? Whilst in reality they do that because they are backed by a €1 billion guarantee that is a European guarantee. And the last point on this, why is there so much paperwork involved? Because very often the same people that criticize the amount of paperwork are those that criticize that money is spilled unnecessarily. And I'll give you one anecdote. Our error quota in Europe is 2%. That means that the auditors, the Court of Auditors, will squeeze their teeth but will accept an error quota of 2% or less. If you move this error quota to 4%, I'm not talking fraud, I'm talking error. I'm not talking fraud. If you move this error quota to 4%, you would reduce the administrative burden that you have justifiably referred to, I'm not denying that it exists, by 60%. But you show me the politician who is willing to go out and say, let's increase the error quota to 4% because it would reduce administrative burden for companies like yours and those that you represent. I haven't found this woman or man in 25 years, and I'm pretty sure I will not be able to find them in the remaining years that I will have in the European Commission. And with that, I close, and thank you for having me. Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you, Andre. Thank you for this very interesting, inspiring point. I have to admit, I have to confess, I was not aware that we had until 15:15, so we have still 5 minutes to go. And Eddie, you're still with us. Do you, because I see you there, I would like to turn back to you if I can. How do you see the discussion happening? Eddie,
yes, I'm still here. I'm listening with great interest to all the discussions that have been going on. There are really interesting presentations, of course, on the reality of place-based policies in European regions. They are really interesting to learn, and I'm wondering also that the one thing in the discussion that's still a bit missing is how to connect these initiatives in all these regions at the European level. Of course, the strength is at the regional level, but I'm also interested in the question, how can we connect promising initiatives, for example, in the Vanguard initiative, and work together on the real interesting topics that make Europe stand out in the competition with China, with the United States, because there is a competition going on a much higher level than just the regional level. But that's the first. And I also agree on the questions that I heard about. Also please pay attention to the smaller firms. This has been a important concern also in the opinion of the European Committee of the Regions on the SME strategy, and we really advocate think small, act regional. Regions can be the bridge between European funds and programs on one hand, and small firms on the other. So there are a lot of interesting examples with regions, of course, giving vouchers or other kinds of regulations, especially for the smaller firms as well. And we also have been working with the EIB to also use regional connections, for instance, the regional development agencies, to get the European money also to the smaller firms, because I really agree with this concern that the European programs should not just be there for the big industries. There's some comments, Thomas.
Thank you, Eddie. I think we learned a lot about that each region have similar challenges, but needs to have their own specific approach to deal with it. And if we think small, we have to be close to the companies, and that is of course much easier when it is the mayor, when it's the regional development agency, when it is the regions, the regional ministry as well. And that's why we advocate this connection between European strategies and local and regional delivery, proximity to the companies on the ground. That is why the Committee of the Region works very close with Eurochambers, with SME United. That's why we are also proud to be part of the European Entrepreneurial Promotion Award, and of course that's why we are working very closely together making this happen. So you gained 5 minutes. That's all. The blame is on me. I would like to thank all the speakers. I would like to thank Eddie for being with us, and sorry for coming back to you. But I would like to also thank you for the attendance, so many, and Andre to the inspiring words. And I wish you all a nice further SME assembly, and thanks for your attention. Thanks to the technicians for the excellent work, and see you soon. Thank you.